All right, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different and talk about the upcoming set, Outlaws of Junction, and the spoilers that have been revealed so far. We have about 7 cards, at least for standard, that have been revealed to us, and I wanted to go over them and some of the combos that have potential for them, some of the synergies, different cards, different decks you might expect to build with them in the coming future. So, without further ado, let's jump into the first card, which is OKO The Ring Leader. 4 mana, a blue, and a green planeswalker. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, OKO the Ringleader becomes a copy of up to one target creature you control until end of turn, except he has hexproof. +1, draw 2 cards. If you've committed a crime this turn, discard a card. And committing a crime, as we know, as far as targeting anything your opponent controls or your opponent, anything in their graveyard, I believe, also counts as committing a crime. Otherwise, discard 2 cards. So great for looting effect. -1 is create a 3/3 green elk creature token. -5 for each other non-land permanent you control. Create a token that's a copy of that permanent. And starts with 3 loyalty. So when I first read this card, I thought about, well, Indomitable Creativity, because I love that card and kind of the name of the channel. Um, but I thought it would work well in an Indomitable Creativity deck because you could go, say, turn 4, or even if you accelerate out the OKO on turn 3, but say turn 4, you play it out, create an elk token, and then the next turn maybe create another elk token if you want, or you could draw 2 cards to look for your Indomitable Creativity. Um, but either way, you can use its passive ability at the beginning of combat on your turn. You can make it become a creature a copy of one of the elk tokens or any other creature you have, but it has hexproof. And so uh, then in the second main phase, you could target OKO and the green elk token for X=2, for example, and you'd know one of them at least would resolve. Um, if for some reason you didn't even hit your fifth land drop, you could just target the OKO and make sure it resolves because it has hexproof. So I thought it would be kind of a nice combo there with an Indomitable Creativity deck, and you could hit 2 of your biggest creatures or artifacts and get them into play. It itself, of course, is not a creature, so works in the deck building with Indomitable Creativity. Um, Doubling Season has a lot of kind of crazy synergy with OKO. If you have a Doubling Season out, this is probably more for casual or commander or whatever. But if you have a Doubling Season out and you play an OKO, then it starts with 6 loyalty, and then you can immediately -5 it. And the -5 creates a token copy of all the permanents. So that would copy the Doubling Season plus anything else you already have in play. But then it would create another copy of it because the original Doubling Season creates copies or doubles the tokens that uh, are created. So that would create 3 Doubling Seasons. I'm not even sure what the math is on that. Plus any other non-land permanent you have would maybe get doubled. I don't even know how many times. I think there's a lot of synergy there. There's quite a combo deck there. Let me know in the comments how many copies of things would actually happen if you Doubling Seasoned and then play OKO and doubled everything, because you double the Doubling Season and that would double itself because, anyways, you get the idea. So there's some combo potential there with Doubling Season, of course. Oh yes, we broke Doubling Season, right? And then in standard, I was trying to think of what would be a really kind of card that would have some combo potential or synergy. Archpriest of Shadows came to mind, which is a 5 mana 4/4 backup 1 creature and has Death Touch. It says whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the idea would be to play out OKO turn 4 or turn 3 if you have maybe a mana acceleration on turn 2, turn 3 OKO, and then you could make an elk right away to protect it, and then the next turn you could use the loot ability to draw and discard to kind of set up your graveyard, maybe with an Atraxa or some big creature, and then play out the Archpriest, back up the the elk that you played on the turn before, and then Oko could become a copy of the Archpriest with its passive ability. So then you'd have essentially two creatures, two 4/4s. If either of them get in, they would reanimate either or both of the big creatures that you just put into your yard. So I thought that would be kind of a sweet setup. Maybe we'll try to build a standard deck around that combination of cards. Let me know if there's any other combos or synergies with Oko I'm missing. I'm sure there's a lot you could do with this Planeswalker. A pretty exciting new one. Moving on, let's see if we can move the slide. Okay, Hell to Pay is a sorcery, 1 red and X, deals X damage to target creature. Create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the amount of excess damage dealt to that creature this way. I don't know if this card is particularly competitive. This You really need to put in a lot of mana into this to really make it have a good payoff. Because if for 1 mana you're doing nothing, maybe I guess you're committing a crime by targeting a creature. So that could come up. Hard to say how relevant that is going to be. But for 1 mana or 2 mana, you're doing 1 damage. 3 mana, you're doing 2 damage, and then you have the potential to make a treasure token if you are, say, killing a 1 toughness creature. And the more mana you put into this, the more kind of scales up and really making more treasure tokens. There are tapped treasure tokens, which is kind of a downside as well. And so you really don't want to just use this as a removal spell. It's a pretty inefficient removal spell. But using it for the treasure token creation could be relevant. I thought of Ginny Fey, which can turn the treasures into cats or dogs. So maybe that would be sort of a nice combo. Turn 3, Ginny Fey. Turn 4, Hell to Pay for X is 3. Maybe if you kill the 1 toughness thing, you get 2 cats or dogs. So not a bad curve there. Or Malcor as well, which counts the number of artifacts that came into play this turn. So it says at the beginning of end step, if 3 or more artifacts enter the battlefield, you get 3/3 colorless golem. So maybe that's another way to trigger Malcor. There's a few other creatures that get buffs for each artifact that came into play. You can think about those. But I think ultimately, this Glimpse of the Core is kind of there to represent. It probably is the best in a ramp deck, because what you want to do within a ramp deck is kill their creatures, but also kill them while ramping. And that kind of does both, which is kind of nice. And you want to be able to put a lot of mana into it. So maybe that's the best home for it. But we'll see. I don't have a high expectation for this card, but some potential, because it can make quite a bit of treasure tokens. And you can also target your own creatures if you need to. And say you're playing as a control deck, they don't have any targets. You could target your own creature and make treasures that way. But yeah, that's Hell to Pay. Let's see. Tiny Bones is next. 1 black for a Skeleton Rogue, 1/1 Death Touch. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be used to cast a spell. So this card actually looks not so great. When I first read it, I was like, it's not great, but I actually think it's got some constructed potential. And I think for standard, you kind of have Cut Down, Thoughtseize, Invasion of Amonkhet, ways to just put permanents into your opponent's graveyard. So say you play this out on turn 1, and then your opponent plays a creature on turn 1 as well, and then you go land, cut down your 1-drop, get in with Tiny Bones, and play your 1-drop. That's pretty powerful. Everything has to go well for that, but that's drawing you an extra card essentially for a 1-mana 1/1. Very powerful, and then continues to kind of be a threat throughout the game. Kind of at its worst is really just a 1/1 Death Touch, which can trade off with anything. So I think it's got some constructive potential. Invasion of Amonkhet can kind of fill your opponent's graveyard, for example, or milling them if you have some effects that mill your opponent. that could be useful. Thoughtseize could sort of, if you went turn 1, Tiny Bones, turn 2, Thoughtseize, I don't know if they had a 1 mana uh, creature, you could discard and get in and uh, steal it that way. So I think it's got some potential. Maybe it plays better than it actually looked at first. And then it is also a skeleton, and I am hoping that maybe there's a skeleton deck sometime in Standard. I love this card, Corpses of the Lost, which boosts all your skeletons and gives them haste, and it's pretty sweet giving this guy haste for 1 mana because he can get in right away. Maybe they won't see it coming, and then you can kind of steal something from their graveyard. So I think Tiny Bones has got some potential to see play, and I might try to build a deck around some of these themes in the future. All right, we also have, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Fizzlethip, Lost in the Range, which is 3 mana, blue card. Legendary Homunculus 1/1 with Ward 2. I think that Ward 2 is actually pretty important on this guy. You may look at the top card of your library. Top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to its mana cost, and you may plot non-land cards from the top of your library. Now, we don't know what plot does yet, so this is all speculation. But the only thing I can think of is, well, because we know that the top card of your library, the plot cost is equal to its mana cost, I thought uh, cards that have 0 mana cost are probably going to combo pretty well with this card. I don't really know exactly what plot's going to do, but if you can just play this, the top of your library has a bunch of 0 mana stuff, you're just going to plot them all in that turn, and that's probably pretty good. Um, Still not sure. Of course, we have to wait and see exactly what plot does, but that sounds probably pretty powerful to get a bunch of extra cards somehow. So I would, we'll have to wait and see. But I would definitely think that this card has some combo potential in maybe older formats. Legacy, you could play Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, and then in Explorer or Pioneer, you can play Ornithopter, Mox Amber. Mox Amber could also tap for a mana because it's a legendary creature. So maybe there's some synergy there. And then the War 2, I think is pretty good because they're going to have to, if you play this on turn 3, they're going to have to leave up all 3 of their mana if they have a removal spell that costs 1 mana, for example. And if they don't, then you just get to go off. So um, again, I really don't know exactly what that means, but I feel like this card might be pretty powerful, especially in the older formats where there's 0 mana cards that you can just kind of turn through on the top of your deck. So we'll see. Yeah. Dualist of the Mind, Nathan Stewart's World Championship card. Very cool. 2 mana for a human advisor. It's a star 3, flying vigilance, and its power is equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Whenever you commit a crime, so whenever you target your opponent or something that they control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, so loot effect. Unfortunately, it has this ability, it only triggers once each turn. That is on your turn, and you could do it on your opponent's turn too if you have an instant that targets them. So that's kind of nice. So a really kind of cheap looting effect. It reminds me a bit of the Prophetic Memory because of wanting to draw as many cards as you can to kind of pump its power. So kind of Steam Core Scholar would be a nice like follow up. Play this onto Steam Core Scholar, and then hit for 3. Flying Vigilance would be a nice turn 2, turn 3. Ancestral Anger kind of draws a card, so this would pump its power twice. So maybe in some sort of like Spellslinger, red-blue deck, Flow of Knowledge draws a bunch of cards for each island, so mono blue deck. Let me know what you think. I mean, I think this card is. I'm probably going to try to build another. Already built a Prophetic Memory deck, but including this in that deck, I think is sort of a natural fit. And then sort of the committing a crime aspect. Maybe you just want to use it in a deck that has burn spells that target your opponent or discard spells and just kind of use it that way, or use it to loot and set up your graveyard somehow. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how easy it is to sort of commit crimes, so to speak. But the card seems quite powerful for just 2 mana. It does a lot: looting, setting up your graveyard, definitely puts a clock on your opponent. Yeah, let me know what you think about this one too, if there's anything I missed. Okay, so now we're moving to this is part of the same set, but it's sort of like a supplemental part of the set, I believe. But I believe the cards are also going to be legal and standard and Explorer, Pioneer, Modern, all that stuff. So we've got Sword of Wealth and Power. So it's another sword. We actually already have, I believe, 2 swords that are legal and standard, but they don't really see any play. So we'll see if this one sees any play. I don't have particularly high hopes for any of the swords. This one included, but we'll see. So this is plus, it gives you +2/+2 protection from instants and sorceries, which is interesting. So not from colors, but instants and sorceries. And whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy the spell, choose new targets for the copy. So getting in and hitting with this is actually pretty powerful. Being able to create a treasure token kind of gives you one of the mana back you use to equip it, or to sort of play the next instant or sorcery spell that you're going to play that turn. So that's nice. And then copying an instant or sorcery spell is kind of no joke sometimes, depending on what the spell is that can win the game. The thoughts I had around this card, this sword, is, well, the protection from instant sorceries is interesting because that protects your own creature from your opponent's instant sorceries, but also from your own instant and sorceries like ill-timed explosion that might do damage to everything, any pyroclasm kind of effect. So you could equip your creature and then cast a Brotherhood End and do 3 to everything, or ill-timed explosion, or any sort of effect that does damage to everything, and your creature will survive. So that is cool. Little synergy. I thought of Shrapnel Blast as sort of like, because it creates a treasure to potentially sacrifice the Shrapnel Blast, and then it's also just a really good card to copy. So you could kind of get in with your guy, do, I don't know, 3 damage. If it's a 1/1, for example, it gives you the treasure, and then you can cast Shrapnel Blast and do 10 to their face. That seems pretty decent. And then in standard, we have, I thought of the Gleaming Gear Drake might be a good target to put on this because it has some evasion flying. So you would have a better chance of getting in, and then it creates treasures that you can sacrifice and then keep pumping the Gear Drake. So maybe in some sort of blue-red deck, and then having some instants or sorcery, some burn spells you can copy. Maybe it's got some potential there. And then there's also just, equipment synergies. This Bladehold War Whip is kind of nice if you went, say, turn 3 Bladehold War Whip. You get the token attached to it, and then the next turn you could play the sword and equip it to the token, because it makes it 1 less to activate. And then so you have a 4/4 double strike. And then so when you hit with this sword, it would create 2 treasure tokens, and then the next time you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you copy it twice. So you could play the sword, equip, attack, hit for 8 damage, and then play, I don't know, a burn spell, a shock, for example, and do 3 shocks. So could be decent in that regard. I'm not sure. I mean, none of the swords really see any play right now. I'm not sure if this one's that much better or different. But being able to kind of copy an instant or sorcery spell is noteworthy. So those are my ideas. Lastly, we have Nexus of Becoming, 6 mana artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, draw a card. Then you may exile an artifact or creature card from your hand. If you do, create a token that's a copy of the exiled card, except it's a 3/3 golem artifact creature in addition to its other types. Okay, so this card is pretty sweet. It does cost 6, but the payoff is I think is pretty solid. Because first of all, it just replaces itself right away. So you get to draw a card, and then the cards I thought you'd want to kind of sneak into play with this, so to speak, are Portal of Phyrexia, because you get the enters the battlefield trigger, even though it's a 3/3 that could potentially die. they would still have to sacrifice 3 creatures, and if they don't kill it, then you kind of keep getting the upkeep uh, effect. The Treefold Thunderhulk is pretty sweet because it's a 0/0, but it would come into play as a 3/3, so it would come into play as a 6/6 actually because of the counters, and you get 6 gnomes. So you could play that, and then whenever you attack, you get 6 more gnomes. That would take over the game pretty quickly. Maybe a tally just to get the come into play trigger, and maybe you'd tally into the portal if you played these all in the same deck. So I'm definitely going to be building a deck with this. I think it's got a lot of potential to do some kind of silly stuff, and you also just draw a card every turn with this out. So pretty strong card, I think. Yeah, that is basically it for the cards we have previewed so far. Again, let me know what you think of any of the combos here, anything I missed. Please let me know. Are you excited for the new set? And let me know what you think about doing sort of more set review videos versus gameplay videos. Happy to do them. I know spoiler season starts pretty soon, so exciting when a new set comes out and there's lots of combos to talk about. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.